Please silence your cell phones.
Hello and welcome to Uncle Neal's Neighborhood, episode number 5. And they said it wouldn't last. I am your host, Uncle Neal, a.k.a. Neal Fox, or maybe it's Neal Fox, a.k.a. Uncle Neal. Doesn't matter, it's still me. My pronouns are, hey you. Don't you love it when these late-night talk show hosts say, we got a great show for you tonight? So what the hell was last week's? Chopped liver? Anyway, let's go back to around 1971, maybe 2 or 3. I was on Columbia Records doing some demos at a place called Electric Ladyland. It was owned by Jimi Hendrix. And in between recording, we ran into lots of celebrities. Richie Havens comes to mind. The lead singer to Mott the Hoople was there for a while. But one time we were recording some demos at a place called the Hit Factory. If my memory serves me, it was a while ago. And I used to rely on my ex-producer manager to fill in my memory gaps. But he's been gone for, several years now. A guy named Stu Weiner. He was a very interesting dude. His father owned a publishing company called Weimar Music Publishing. They published the Isley Brothers, Aretha Franklin, lots and lots of people. He even had Paul Simon doing demos on guitar for him. Of course, that was long before Paul had his hits with Artie. So, like I said, if my memory serves me, we were doing some more demos for Columbia, couple of songs of mine, and Shelley Yakis, famed engineer, was the engineer. I believe it was the Hit Factory, I'm pretty sure. And right before we would go into the studio, turns out John Lennon was recording one of his solo albums. I think this was the time when John had a crew cut. At any rate, he was there with Yoko and his girlfriend. And so, of course, we ran into them as they were finishing their session and we were getting ready to start ours. And Stu had the balls to go over and ask John if we could sit in the control room and watch them record for a while. And John said, yeah. Well, the story would be much more interesting if we actually did that. Unfortunately, Yoko nixed the idea. Can't say that I blame her. I wouldn't really want people sitting in on my sessions, especially if I was a world-famous Beatle. And I was at Columbia Records for 2.5 years before they let me out of my contract, which is a whole nother story. The way I got my contract at Columbia was auditioning on a spinet piano in an office in the Black Rock. That's what they call the Columbia building because it was all this black granite. And after I played 2 songs on this little dinky piano in an office, they said, you're on the label. Now just play for our enjoyment. Wow, I was on Columbia Records. Unfortunately, the day I got home after signing the contract, I was watching Eyewitness News, and they said that they just fired Clive Davis, who was the president of Columbia Records. So anybody that had anything to do with my being on the label left with Clive. That left me with nobody in my corner. So after 2.5 years of doing demos and nothing happening, I had to figure out a way to get out of my contract, which was actually pretty simple. I went up to their office and played them some of my best new songs. Songs like We're Locked Out, which was all about me being locked out of my apartment. Or a song like Cousin 80 Was a Lady, or Why Don't You Sit on My Face? And then there was the ever-popular I'm a Doctor in a Girls' School. I was out of my contract the next day. And little by little, from the mid-'60s, I started writing more and more songs about what's going on in the world. You know, quote, protest songs, unquote. That's what I did mostly in my ute. My ute. Anybody remember the film My Cousin Vinny? Joe Pesci was his lawyer, and Fred Gwynne was the judge, and Pesci says, Your Honor, he's talking about these 2 utes, and Fred Gwynne says, what's a ute? one of my favorite lines. Another great line was when Marisa Tomei said, "What, you blend?" She reminded me totally of my own Italian-American New York wife. But I digress. Meanwhile, the situation in the world kept pulling at me more and more and more, and things started coming to a head, a real big, fat pimple about the year 2020 when the pandemic hit. And that's when I decided to write my Unhinged album. And here's the title song, called, funny enough, Unhinged, inspired by the events of 2020 and beyond. way too many hippie musicians, the old guys, the baby boomers, which, of course, I'm a member of, they kind of abandoned their post as anti-establishment and have become the establishment. They've become the man. Neil Young has become the latest in the long line of anti-establishment artists. He wrote to Spotify and demanded they get rid of Joe Rogan or he would leave Spotify. His reasoning was that Joe Rogan had the audacity to have guests on who were actual doctors, and he would ask them questions about the jab. And according to Neil Young, apparently, two-sided conversations are just not allowed anymore. Just go along with the establishment. That's the way to do it. So, since Spotify paid something like $100 million to Joe Rogan, and he has millions and millions of followers, Neil Young bit the dust. And I just heard this morning that a lot of people are leaving Spotify in protest. Guess they don't like people asking questions and learning to think for themselves. Just shows you what a good long government education will do to your mind. Just as a little aside, months before Neil Young wrote his now famous letter to Spotify, I had actually written a note to them saying that it's got to be me or Neil Young. Take your pick. You can't have us both. Now, I'm not saying that Joe Rogan didn't have some sort of an influence on this whole thing, but you never know. Howard Stern is another sellout. Used to be so anti-establishment, shock jock. Now he's all, the government knows what's best for you and your health, and we will force you to take this experimental jab. But we still have a few older musicians who are willing to speak their mind, even at the cost of being canceled by a bunch of socialists who think that socialism is somehow sociable. Eric Clapton and Van Morrison are two of the latest to actually stand up for what they believe in. Do you remember way back when being a liberal meant you were all for free speech and people's rights and tolerance? Today's liberal is not the liberal of the 1960s and 70s. And even though I love John Lennon's music more than you can imagine, I re-listened to his lyrics of the song Imagine quite a few years ago and found out, hey, this is communism, which John actually admitted to, even though he himself is not a communist. So with all due respect to John, wherever he may be at this point, I wrote a song, and here it is for you. It's my answer to Imagine. It's called Karl Marx is a Schmuck.
Come gather round and listen to what your teachers wouldn't tell. There's something you've been missing that you should know so well. Life becomes a prison when what you know is wrong. When thinking is just isn't, you need to hear my song. Karl Marx is a schmuck. If it quacks and lays eggs, it's a duck. He sounds so benevolent, his theory's so relevant. In practice, you're shit out of luck. 'Cause Karl Marx is a schmuck. His wife and his kids lived in squalor, and still he refused to work. He never earned a dollar. His brilliance had just this one quirk. The elite got eliter, the rest useless eaters. The tyrants all love this one perk. Karl Marx is a jerk. Karl Marx is a schmuck. If it quacks and lays eggs, it's a duck. He sounds so benevolent, his theory's so relevant. In practice, you're shit out of luck. 'Cause Karl Marx is a schmuck. In college they think he's a hero, a friend to the downtrodden mass. He promises mucho dinero to all of the lower class. But commies are parasites, feeding off human rights, hiding their heads up their butts. Karl Marx is a putz. Karl Marx is a schmuck. If it quacks and lays eggs, it's a duck. He sounds so benevolent, his theory's so relevant. In practice, you're shit out of luck. 'Cause Karl Marx is a schmuck. They want a powerful father to make everything alright. To do things themselves they won't bother till they knock on their door in the night. To some he's a savior, to wit Scandinavia, a neat little fact-checking trick. Karl Marx is a prick. His theories killed 100 million, enslaved quite a few more. But what's another few billion? Is that what you're fighting for? His racism grew, the black and the Jew, and Mexican too. He said it's just class versus class. Karl Marx is an ass. Karl Marx is a schmuck. Sing it out! If it quacks and lays eggs, it's a duck. He sounds so benevolent, his theory's so relevant. In practice, you're shit out of luck. 'Cause Karl Marx is a schmuck. I can't hear you. Karl Marx is a schmuck. Sing it proudly. Karl Marx is a schmuck. Hide your daughters. Karl Marx is a schmuck. One more time. Karl Marx is a schmuck.
This is what they should be teaching in high schools all across the world. Have a little sing-along with a bouncing ball, a little karaoke. Karl Marx's Everybody Sing. Hey, this show is brought to you by my favorite sponsor, me. You can pick up my latest album, Unhinged, which is getting great reviews, by the way. You can get it at my website, therealnealfox.com. It's Neal, not IL, as you probably know by now. Or you could stream it from all the streaming places that you like to stream from. And you could also get merch at my website as well. And I'll love you so much, and that's about it for now. Before we go, I'd like to give a big shout out to all the truckers in Canada who are standing up for our basic human rights. And they are now being joined by truckers all over the world. People are standing in freezing weather, cheering these folks as they go by. This is a major, major event. It's basically telling Trudeau and all the other mini tyrants of the world what they can do with their fascism. So it looks like this could be the beginning of the end from all that suppression we've been feeling the last 2 years. My hats off to them. Way to go, Canada. Remember, we are 7 billion, and the tyrants of the world would fit into a few garbage dumpsters. That's it for now for Uncle Neal's Neighborhood episode number 5. Please share it, tell your friends, follow me on Spotify, follow me on wherever I'm around to be followed. And I urge you to go to YouTube and kick their AI in the butt by following me, subscribing, liking my music videos. I think you'll really get a kick out of them. They add a lot to the songs that you're hearing here. And you could also patronize me at patreon.com/Neal Fox. But most of all, share, get this word out. And don't forget, if you're not feeling that great, a little bit down, just go out and find somebody who needs a little help. It'll be the best way to help yourself. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.